Coming up this week on Sporting Journal Radio, Aaron Wiebe from Uncut Angling joins us right now.
The whole idea that I was demonstrating is that the fish is releasable. That doesn't mean it's going to live.
I've talked to a few biologists since then to learn a little bit more about, what was the deal with the fin clips?
I did speak with Minnesota DNR. We had a good hour and a half phone call.
We just watched them release 12 crappies safely, and they're just fine.
Our fish handling as an entire community just needs to get so much better.
I fish, I hunt, and always will. Broadcasting from the Eau Claire Outdoors Studios.
Presented by OnX. Know where you stand with OnX.
We're not just a radio show anymore. This is Sporting Journal Radio. Ask and you shall receive. Last week, we talked about Barotrauma with Jeremy Smith from Angling Buzz as he responded to a video from Aaron Wiebe and Uncut Angling. Well, you said put Aaron on this week's show. We did. Aaron's coming up here in a little bit. We'll also get a Lake of the Woods fishing report. I'm Brett Amundsen. That's Dan Amundsen right over there. Dan, how you doing?
Good. Let's be careful. You're not going to get everything you ask for. So I just want to throw that out there. If you ask for certain things, we might say no. But this is one we agree with.
I just
want to clarify.
Trying to see where you're going with that.
Well, I just want to make sure that people don't think they can just ask for whatever they want and we can get them on the show.
Oh, I see.
We're not magic genies here, but Aaron was nice enough to come on our show, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. For more Barotrauma.
Barotrauma. Dun, dun, dun. That's David Eckhardt right over there. David, are you ready for this week's show with all the Barotrauma stuff?
I guess. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Oh, you're a guy who grows corn.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't watched any of the videos?
No, David.
And I was not on last week, so I have no idea what's going on.
Well, okay. All right. Well, just sit back and enjoy the show.
Just trying to shoot a deer. And
Is this what we pay you for?
yes, yeah. I can talk about deer hunting or fishing out of a boat.
Yeah. How wild is that? I want to ask you about that. It's January. Welcome to the new year. Happy New Year, everybody, by the way.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you
That
as well.
was really loud.
That was very loud. We're going to talk about what this new year has been like so far for ice anglers out there, or what it hasn't been like so far, and talk fishing. We're going to talk about some new things that we've got coming for you from Fish Hunt Forever. But first, Dan, who should we thank for this week's show?
Live Target. Match the hatch at livetargetlures.com. Lake of the Woods Tourism. Lake of the Woods is the Walleye capital. Plan a trip for this winter at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Haybell Heights Campground and Resort. Book a trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Learn more at haybellheights.com. We should update that so it's a snow bear. Ottertail Lakes Country. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com. And Prairie Sportsman. We are so close to the new season coming up in January, but you can watch episodes anytime at the Prairie Sportsman YouTube channel.
Hey, one thing I want to address too. We had last week we were talking about, don't go ice fishing or be real careful, whatever. And then we ran a bunch of ads that said, hey, let's go ice fishing. We understand the situation there. So, of course, be very, very careful. We have some businesses that rely on ice fishing and tourism and fishing and things like that. And they're not going to put you in an unsafe position. But we want to promote ice fishing because better ice is coming. We've had some colder weather. But we want you to be very careful and very safe and rely on some of the people that are out there every single day checking ice conditions. So if you're going to ice fish, please be very, very careful. Or just go in your boat.
Yep.
Like David did. How was fishing?
It was tough.
So maybe don't go in your boat?
Well, we'd only fished the last couple hours of the day. If we'd have been out there all day, I think we'd have found more fish. But
I've used that excuse before.
Well, yeah. But I felt like we were fishing the Rainy River in the spring. Like there was a pretty good ice flow.
Oh, really?
Ice chunks. The surface temp was almost 31 degrees, 30.8, I think it was. And as soon as that sun went away, it was getting pretty slushy. But it was still fun. I got to say I fished in my boat January 1st.
Yeah, there you go. Have you ever done that before?
No.
Yeah. I mean, even some of the lakes, people fishing out of their boats in some of the lakes around here, late December, early January, just kind of a crazy, crazy year. When you were out there then, so the only thing I don't like about ice or open water fishing like this time of year, is, you know, you can have things start to ice up a little bit. Did you have any problems with the boat or the motor or your guides or your line?
Yeah, the rod tips were freezing and reels were getting pretty crunchy when you'd cast. But like I said, we were only out there for a couple hours.
What kind of line were you using?
Just my regular summer rod setup. It's
So braid,
8-pound
mono?
Just mono.
Oh, okay, never mind. I was gonna say because we fished with Tim Domal on the Pool 4 in February last year, and he normally likes to fish braid, and he's like, hey, in this time of year when the water's gonna be freezing, I go away from braid because braid will soak up that water. So that's a tip for cold weather anglers, to stay away from summer braid and go to mono. And there are some different things to do with your motor. David, I'm sure you probably did this, but you know, drain it.
I had my
Maybe you did.
surface
Oh, you had a
drive,
surface drive. That's right.
so
I guess with
wasn't
regular
worried about
outboards, you know, make sure you drop the motor after you pull it out to drain all the water. Some guys will fire it up real quick at the access to kick all that water out of your hoses and everything, just to make sure there's nothing inside freezing. There's precautions to take there, but there are open water fishing opportunities year round in Minnesota. It's
Yeah.
fun.
So next time you're fishing out of your boat on January 1st,
Yeah.
use these handy tips. I remember duck hunting one year. I was with Tony Crotty, and we dumped the boat in, and it has surface drive. And as we were kind of loading up the boat at the access there for a while, the waves, I mean, it was windy and it was cold. The waves were kind of pushing up into it, and the water got on the outside of the boat, and we couldn't pull the pin out for the motor position. It froze in, so we couldn't even drop. I mean, like, we couldn't even move the motor.
Yeah.
So we did not duck hunt that day.
That's another thing with wind and ice and stuff. If you have a bunk trailer and you normally disconnect your boat, maybe, you know, before you back it in, maybe don't do that, because your bunks might be a little slick and your boat could slide right off, or fun stuff like that. And bring sand for the landing. You know, try to drain all the water off your trailer and boat as you're pulling it out into the river. Otherwise, if you don't drain it and you drive up, all that water is going to drain out on the access and make it real slick for the next guy. But it also helps to have some sand. I've been in situations in March where I've launched the boat and it's been fine, and then it snows and there's just a slick layer of snow, and I could not get the boat off the ramp and with that layer of snow until we got sand on there. And it's a really uneasy feeling when you're driving forward and all of a sudden you stop and you start going backwards toward a rushing river in your truck.
There was one other boat that pulled out ahead of us, and I definitely, stepping over the tongue of the trailer, I definitely fell on the fell down. Didn't fall in the water, but yeah, it was a little icy right next to the water.
Yeah. So little things if you're going to do that. But do you think the Beltrami County Red Lake vehicle restriction applies to boats? If you wanted to bring a boat up there.
Well, you know, that was a great question. I wanted to bring that up because I guess it happened 20 years ago somewhere, maybe there. I don't know.
Wasn't it Lake Chautauqua somebody was telling us about?
That's right. Ice conditions were bad, so the sheriff's department restricted vehicle access. But you brought up a good point when Red Lake did this, because our buddy Corey Loeffler was just up there with an Argo. And, you know, an Argo is a little bit of a safer motorized vehicle.
Yeah.
So would that motorized vehicle restriction apply to a vehicle like an Argo?
That's a water vehicle? I don't know. That is a good question, actually, because if I remember correctly, the resort they went out of wasn't letting ATVs or vehicles at all out, and they made an exception because it was an Argo that
they did.
floats. I'm pretty sure I remember that. Again, Corey, yell at me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what happened. But I would guess, just to make it easy and have no gray areas, it's just a vehicle with wheels you ain't going. Man, maybe a Sherp. I don't know, because then you got Sherps up there too.
Wheelcrafts.
I want one of those.
Yeah.
Wheelcraft, yeah.
I don't know. I guess, I don't know. Stick to your two legs, maybe. I don't know. Definitely no airplanes. I think airplanes are off the table.
Yeah. Well, please be safe on the ice, of course. What a weird year this year, seeing a vehicle restriction by the sheriff's department on a lake. That's such a wild thing to happen, and not something that I expected, not something that I'd seen before,
Well,
even if it did happen before.
It almost was expected, because, well, not really, but it's like what do you say it a lot, Brett. If we don't take some responsibility for ourselves, the government's going to come in and place restrictions. We've talked about it.
Happened.
We've talked about it with littering. We've talked about it with fish limits, blah, blah, blah. Here's a perfect example of it. Humans couldn't help themselves. They kept putting themselves at risk and needing help. And finally the government said, we've had enough. We're going to restrict this. And it's a perfect example of if we can't take responsibility for our own actions before the government's going to swoop in and place rules. And that honestly is the root of a lot of our conversations lately.
Maybe and if people didn't like that, maybe people are saying, hey, we don't, I'm comfortable. I had safe ice out here. Don't restrict me. This is America. Maybe it's something different where it's like, okay, here's the rule. We're not going to restrict you, but we're not going to rescue you.
We're not coming to help you. Yeah.
This day, and from this time until we determine things are better, you're on your own. And there is more personal responsibility in that. Now, we don't want to see anybody have issues on the ice, of course. But maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's the deal. And
We're
then
spitballing here.
Yeah, and then if you do that and you don't rescue them, then people get mad at you for not rescuing them.
You can't win. You can't win. Bottom line.
I wonder if they would allow dog sleds.
Well, not if you're Bear Grease.
Yeah, canceled the Bear Grease this year, which must be no snow. I don't know what it's like up north, but I'm guessing not a whole lot of snow up there. Bad news.
Alex Trebek says no.
Speaking of Corey Loeffler, by the way, we've got a new video on the Fish Hunt Forever channel. Grab the Kleenex, because this one will hit you right in the feels. You know from the beginning that they're not going to be with us forever. But that doesn't make it any easier.
The end of the world at the palm of my hand.
One of the best parts of hunting is watching the dog work.
When it all goes to hell, will you still be my friend?
One of the worst parts of hunting, come on,
My face to the sea
is watching that dog get old. I mean, this dog right here, she's been my life.
If you can't come with me, I'll understand. I'll understand.
So it's been tough to go out and get a new dog. But it's time.
Can we meet in the dark? We don't have to say much. And if you have to go, have to go. If we didn't know what we know.
While it isn't always easy, it's always worth it. This is a story about the highs and the lows of raising a gun dog. I don't know how many times I've watched that, and it gets me every time. Like trying to make that video even, it was painful. So that's a little promo for the new series. The first episode featuring Corey Loeffler's Boone is available now at the Fish Hunt Forever YouTube channel. We also have a new video on this channel right here, the Sporting Journal Radio YouTube channel, the North American Waterfowl Podcast. We talked to Bruce Davis, who's a waterfowl biologist with the Minnesota DNR. He has been banding mallards and putting backpacks, GPS transmitters on them. And we interviewed him about that program to learn what mallards are doing. When are they migrating? How far are they migrating? What time of day are they going out to feed? What type of fields are they feeding in? What has he learned from this research? Find out more at sportingjournalradio.com or download the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts or watch it right here on this channel that you're watching right now. And thank you for watching it. Comment below, because everybody who comments, we got to draw a winner from last week's.
Oh, shoot.
We're supposed to announce that on this week's show. We'll put it in the comments. We'll draw and put it in the comments here.
And we'll announce it on social. So
we'll
find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the whole shebang.
Everybody who comments on our video, we'll put you in a drawing for free merch from the Sporting Journal Radio store. Find out more at sportingjournalradio.com. Yeah! We're going to talk about conditions up at Lake of the Woods with Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism. And then we got a great interview coming up. Aaron Wiebe from Uncut Angling. We're glad he's joining us this week to talk about barotrauma, the research, the video that he's done, and also the research and stuff that's been put out by the DNR and Angling Buzz. All that on the way. You don't want to miss this. Stay there.
852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties.
All in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. Ice fishing season is here. This winter, plan a trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Not only will you have the chance to catch their legendary perch, but this year, Haybale Heights has been catching big walleye after big walleye. And they're doing it from a mobile, comfortable snow bear. No matter how cold it is outside, you're warm and toasty on the inside. Learn more and book a trip today at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. All right, welcome back. This is Sporting Journal Radio. I'm Brett Amundson along with Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt. Now we're going to talk to Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism to talk about fishing up at Lake of the Woods. Joe, it's been a weird year this year for ice fishing.
Boy, I'll tell you what, our winter has certainly been unseasonable to say the least, and it's just been really weird, and it's been weird across much of the country, certainly weird in Minnesota, and certainly it's not a normal winter up at Lake of the Woods either, From where we normally would be the first part of January, obviously we're very far off because of this year's climate. And you know what? We're just kind of rolling with the punches, trying to obviously keep everybody safe and really leaning on the resorts and outfitters, Brett, to, assess the ice in their area, make sure that their ice trails are good to go. And it's also preventing us from going on certain parts of the lake that we might be fishing now. We're staying in parts that we know that have better ice.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. These guys are out there every day checking the conditions where they're fishing and making sure it's safe to go there.
Yeah, well, and it's ice fishing, and I guess obviously it's safety first, and obviously it's a weird year. I think really it's one of those things too where people really have to, it's a personal choice, right, to go ice fishing. And there's risk when I walk outside my door, and there's risk when I get into my automobile, and there's risk when I get on a snowmobile or four-wheeler or whatever I do, get into a boat. And, there's risk with ice fishing too. And of course, we obviously, our resorts and our outfitters do everything they can. I mean, most of these are family businesses. They have their family members working the ice and making sure it's safe. And if you take a look at the tens of thousands of people that enjoy ice fishing, not only at Lake of the Woods, but also just in the ice belt, it's a relatively, I guess, safe sport. Unfortunately, especially with the winter we've had this year, there are things that can happen. And obviously we just want to be cognizant of everybody. Some people just don't feel safe going out, but there's other people that do feel just fine going out, and they feel comfortable going out, especially on other people's ice transportation that are monitoring trails on a daily basis. Again, it's personal choice. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, 100%. We like having personal choice, of course, in America. We appreciate having that. And some of those resorts, if they've seen ice that's not great, they've pulled people out, right? I mean, they're not out there just pushing things every day.
We know what's hard is sometimes you'll see you get on social media in today's world, and there's a lot of experts out there, so-called experts, and right away, hey, listen, the people will put anybody on the ice. All they want to do is make money. It's about greed, and that is so far from the truth. These are hardworking human beings who have done this for years and years. They got their family life, their lives, their family lives, their guest lives. They have their reputation, their character, everything else, and they take it seriously. So yes, they have shut down ice fishing when they don't think conditions are good, and that's after they've been ice fishing. So they've been out there ice fishing, when we had some weather patterns come through that were pretty warm, they actually stopped all their ice fishing for a while until it froze really hard again, and then they got people back out, of course, after they checked the ice again. But so they do adapt, and that's one of the reasons I think you work through an outfitter is you trust their judgment, you trust their track record, and it's about keeping everybody safe and still having fun. I mean, it's just a weird winter, put it that way.
Yeah, and when you have people that invest in taking a trip, or they get 1 week a year or 1 weekend a year to go on an annual trip, or maybe that's their first time ever going, these resorts are going to do what they can to accommodate people who may be taking the only fishing trip of the year that these people can. Well, obviously, if it's unsafe, they're not going to let them out there, but they're going to try to find a safe place for them to go, no matter what, right?
Well, sure, absolutely. And the other thing too is they're also doing what they can. If they within the last week and a half, some of the resorts, because of the warm spell we had a while back here, they stopped ice fishing in their area for a few days. And when they did that, they have to call and cancel all those trips, all those reservations. And that's hard for everybody. And then, of course, they try to rebook them if they have any openings moving forward. And, with some of the ice conditions we've had this year, I mean, shoot, if you go down to the Minneapolis Twin Cities area where some of our clientele come from, or southern Minnesota or Iowa, Nebraska, Dakotas, there's open water still down there. Yeah. It's a very, very different world than it is up at Lake of the Woods, of course. But, people see that and they get a little freaked out, too. They can't imagine there's ice. And, so consequently, some people have canceled, quite honestly, and they just don't feel comfortable. And that's created openings for others who maybe didn't make ice fishing plans, but would like to get out this winter. Again, it's personal choice. I just want to be transparent. But at the same time, there are some opportunities during a normally very busy winter season up at Lake of the Woods. There are a few more opportunities because of the weird weather we've had that people can get in and get some ice fishing done. And I was just talking to somebody up the Northwest Angle. I just spoke to somebody from the South Shore, and fishing's been pretty darn good. And they're fishing on good ice, and but again, it's being sensitive to all the different ice conditions and things that have happened this year. We certainly want to stress, hey, listen, do your homework, talk to the outfitters, give them a call if you don't feel comfortable, ask them about conditions. You can ask them about the ice transportation, how are people getting out. In some cases, people can bring their own snowmobiles and side by sides and four wheelers and things and go out on trails. Other resorts are saying, no, we're not going to let anybody go out. We want to make sure that we transport you out so nobody goes off our trails. I mean, everybody's different in how they do it, but the bottom line is people are trying to be safe and at the same time get you on some fish.
Yeah, safety first, fish second, but fish is pretty important, of course, too. And probably the best part about this is we've had some cooler weather, and we've got some colder weather in the forecast, so we should be starting to make some better ice.
Especially with no snow.
Yeah, right.
We've had some single digits overnight, and we're also staying in the teens pretty consistently up north, and all that really. I mean, if you can stay in the teens and 20s, even for 18 hours of the day or more, I mean that's making ice, and it all helps. Put it that way, and let's hope we get some cold weather here to lock things up sooner rather than later. And so far we're in a good stretch, I guess.
Well, I'm looking forward to get back up there, of course. It's Lake of the Woods. People make it a point to go there, if not once, many times throughout the year, particularly in the winter. Of course, it's a destination for many anglers. I think we got a trip maybe coming up in February up there that we're working out right now. So we're looking forward to that. And Joe, if people want, look at those temperatures, below zero.
Ice,
below
baby.
Zero, single digits. I mean, that's all good stuff. And the other thing I'll mention too is that if people, if they want to schedule a trip up there, if they had to cancel a trip anywhere and want to get up to Lake of the Woods. And the other thing, don't forget about March. I mean, if we get the kind of weather that we normally will get, there can be some nice opportunities in March too. We can keep our fish houses, because we're border water with Canada and it's colder. We can keep our fish houses out through the month of March. And the walleye and sauger season's open through April 14th. So it's really an extended season, which gives some more opportunities as well.
Yeah, well, where should they find more information about booking a trip up there, Joe?
Our website is really our hub, and that is lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
Lake of the Woods, the walleye capital of the world, is calling out to you. From the Northwest Angle to the South Shore and Rainy River, this is the Midwest's #1 ice fishing destination. Walleye, sauger, perch, northern pike, and eelpout. The fishing on Lake of the Woods is like a world of its own. Experience the most amazing fishing through one of the many full-service resorts featuring heated fish houses, ice transportation, meal plans, and sleeper fish house options. For more information, go to lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
Live Target, the leader in Match the Hatch, is back with new lures that also match the action. Introducing the Live Craw. The Live Craw is irresistible to bass, walleye, and other freshwater species. FTech's winner, the Ultimate Frog, looks and acts just like a swimming frog. With an exposed Ultra Point mustad hook and replaceable legs, the Ultimate Frog has 2 styles, 2 sizes, and 8 colors. And iCast and FTech's winner, the Live Shrimp, mimics a fleeing shrimp for saltwater anglers. Coming soon from Live Target.
Looking for winter adventure? Might as well pick a place with over 1,000 lakes. Ottertail County, Minnesota is in the middle of everywhere, offers a simpler pace, and has something for everyone. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com.
And we're back. This is Sporting Journal Radio. Thanks for tuning in on the network, by demand, sportingjournalradio.com, or by watching this on YouTube. Thank you very much. If you have a comment, please leave it below. Everybody that comments on these videos will be entered to win some Sporting Journal Radio gear, Fish on Forever gear, whatever you might see in the Sporting Journal Radio store, available at sportingjournalradio.com. We're excited. We got a great show for you this week, and we're looking forward to bring this guest on. Aaron Wiebe from Uncut Angling joins us right now. Aaron, first of all, how you doing, man? We're glad you're back. We're glad to see you on YouTube. We're glad that you're here. And first off, you're the reason that each summer up at Tasman Lake Lodge, I want to cut off some of my hair and try to catch a big pike. I just want to throw that out there. So
why am I the? I've never been to Tasman.
No, but you've used your hair to catch big fish before.
Gotcha.
So thanks for coming on the show, man. We appreciate it.
Happy to be on here. Thanks for taking me on short notice and stuff. This is pretty cool, and I think it just shows that we are all here on the same page, basically, to want to get together on this timeline to talk about it.
Yeah, barotrauma and the advancements in technology, obviously 2 very important topics that we want to discuss. Obviously, you wanted to share your concerns about those topics and what's being done about those things in your recent video that you put out. And obviously, we had a couple concerns about a few of the things that you put in there. And it wasn't, like I said to you before, it wasn't like a personal attack on you or anything. It's obviously important things that I think we need to discuss. And I think we're all looking for the same thing out there, and that's education about these topics. So let's just go back just a little bit. You're sitting down, you're watching YouTube, you see this Uncut Angling video with the DNR on the study.
Angling Buzz.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said Uncut Angling.
Oh yeah, sorry. Angling. There's a lot of angling going on. You see Angling Buzz with this study about barotrauma at the Minnesota DNR. What goes through your head as you're watching this?
Well, actually, I was doing some research on some other barotrauma studies at the time, ironically, and I had mentioned some frustrations about them, some studies down in Manitoba, to a few different people. And someone mentioned, have I seen this barotrauma study? And I said, no, I haven't, but definitely send it to me, because I'm always interested in hearing about this kind of stuff. And also because these topics they're hot topics, obviously, as is evident by us having to sit down and have a follow-up conversation about past videos. It's not a common thing that usually gets done in the fishing media world. So anytime that the topic gets touched, I'm very interested on how people are going to try and approach it, because myself, over the years, I have not known how to necessarily touch this topic, because you don't want to be the one that puts endpoints on the topic, whether that's like specifics on depths or anything. Kind of like when people are talking about water being too hot for muskie, then it's like, okay, well, where is that exact number that's too much, right? I think people usually use around 80 degrees, but then it's like, what if you had a trip planned that day, someone in from out of town, and all of a sudden the water jumped up to 81? What are you supposed to do? Cancel your whole trip? Like, where is that exact threshold? And then people will justify it and say, well, we'll just be really quick and skip pictures or whatever we need to do to make it doable in that scenario. So I guess that's why I haven't touched the topic too much, and why I'm very interested when someone else touches it. And when I saw the Angling Buzz video that was like 3 or 4 years ago that they did. I remember like leaning in to see, okay, what are you guys going to say about this? Because I think the title was something about deep water crappies. And when Jeremy and James got into it, and Jeremy basically just said, catch your limit and go home, I was like, yes, that's so awesome. Like, that's just, it's so obvious. And it made me mad that I hadn't thought of that, because it simplifies it to the point where we don't even need to debate the unknowns or what the mortality might be. We can just say it's a dangerous activity, avoid it at all costs. And just like that, you put a bow on the topic and you don't need to really dig into it too much more. So I really like that. I remember at the time thinking I should send them a message. I don't know if I ever did. I actually, as soon as this came up, I was trying to see in my past emails and stuff if I had ever reached out to them about that, because I was so impressed with how they had done that messaging. And that's why I wanted to make sure that I led off with that in my video to kind of include that. And it actually was, if I established those 5 steps for handling a deep water fishing scenario, and I led with number 1 being repeating exactly what they had said. So if at any point you don't get through those 5 steps, they are in order of importance. And the first one is exactly what they said: avoid it because there's so much we don't know about it, or just keep your limit and go home. And then the second one is rush the fish back in the water, which is kind of like an all-encompassing thing for fishing practices in general. But the importance of it gets higher and higher when there's stresses involved, like barotrauma in this situation. And I guess that's one frustration that I've had when hearing you guys break down my video or hear other people's comments on it, is it seems like they're glossing over those first 2 steps, which I lay out as being so important. And when the first step of 5 is to avoid it, I think I'm sending a pretty clear message there. And then the second step is hurry the fish back in the water, reduce fish handling. So that's before you even get to 3, 4, and 5. And that's where people are hung up on exactly what that, some of the little steps I was doing in releasing the fish. And then where people really had a hang up was, well, how do you know what happened to those fish after 24 to 48 hours? And right. I don't know why I'm suddenly being tasked with attacking that topic, because my feeling on the Angling Buzz video is that the fish kind of got mishandled and didn't even make it to the possibility of surviving. So that was the whole point of my video, was rush the fish back in the water. At least it has a chance. And led with avoid deep water fishing. So anyways, that's kind of like an outline of how I saw the video, because I didn't happen to notice it, but someone sent it to me because they know I'm always like interested for a good barotrauma discussion.
Which is awesome, because I think that's such an important thing to educate people on. I know a lot of anglers that just don't even know what barotrauma is, and maybe they just don't fish deep very often or whatever the case may be, but there's a lot of people that just don't know what it is. So I love any discussion I see about it. I try to watch or read or whatever and pay attention to learn a little bit more about it. And honestly, I think that's where our concern was with, and I thought it was great that you said don't fish deep water as number 1, because that is important. But what ended up, we had a lot of people that really liked your video that commented to us or sent us messages. And some of them were nice, and some of them were not. But a few of them basically said, "Well, we just watched them release 12 crappies safely, and they're just fine." And I think that was, unfortunately, the takeaway that some people had, which is where we had the and this is not directed at you, but it doesn't matter how many times sometimes you tell people don't do this, and then you do it, and then they see it. Oh, those fish are fine, and then that's what they take away from it. So that was where we were coming from, I think, when we talked about not fishing deep water and then fishing the deep water in that video. And then I know and this is my fault, but I know when I watched it at first, I got a little defensive right away, just because I'm jacked about this study. There's no question that some things can be refined and some things can be done differently from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. But when I heard about it a year ago that they were going to do it, and that Angling Buzz was involved, a pretty respectable organization, I was pretty excited about what they were going to learn from it. And obviously it's going to be an ongoing study. So, education needs to happen. And the fish were out of the water for a little bit, but without some of those controls to determine, to try to find a way to track fish, it's hard to get scientific results or the type of research that you need so you can track those fish as far as, clipping fins and things like that. Obviously, you're going to reduce the fish's ability to survive potentially by keeping them out of the water that long or taking a small clip off the fin. But I've talked to a few biologists since then to learn a little bit more about, well, what was the deal with the fin clips? Why were they doing it? Why on the tail fin? And it was described to me that really all the fins kind of work together. So a little clip off the tail fin may not be as detrimental as it seemed like it could be. And then they used that tail fin. It sounds like they used the tail fin. They either clip a little bit off the top or clip a little bit off the bottom to determine what, if that fish was caught in the shallower part of the study or the deeper part of the study. So it was a way to track those fish. And honestly, what you did with the live scope, I thought was brilliant. Using it as a conservation tool so that it's because I agree, the live scope and forward-facing sonar are not the enemy. I'm 100% in agreement with you on there. And I thought it was great that you watched him follow him down. The issue, as you know, is how do you track him after that? And how do you determine delayed mortality or survival of that fish after it disappears from live scope or goes back into a big school of fish? And when it comes to measuring those fish, it may or may not have been an important part of the study, but if they came back to look at those fish the next day, having that measurement allows them to say, okay, this was this fish, this was the level of barotrauma that it was exhibiting the day before, this is what it's doing now. It's, the research obviously isn't perfect, and I think a lot of people commented that your video will probably help them determine methods in the future, and I think it will as well. But I mean, like as far as tracking those fish beyond what you could see on the live scope, are there any other ideas that you might have on how to determine any sort of delayed mortality on those fish?
I mean, yeah, they could just descend them in that net pen instead of letting them struggle on the surface.
Help them down a little bit.
Well, use a descending tool.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea that I was demonstrating is that the fish is releasable. That doesn't mean it's going to live, but it's releasable, and it has a chance if you let it as fast as you can and whatnot. Still avoid deep water fishing, saying that. And the kind of the framework of your guys' show is all about education, and we keep talking about education for this, and you kind of wrapped up the forward-facing sonar topic about how important education is. So that's why I think that I feel like I'm being played kind of both ways on that, where you guys keep talking about education, and then I show education on how to properly release a crappie to give it the best chance, and all the while saying, avoid this. And then it's being said that I'm being hypocritical and that I'm teaching people the wrong way, even though I'm literally teaching them the right way. And these things, the hope would be that these tips in terms of releasing it quickly and making sure there's no slush or air in its mouth would be applied to crappies that are being caught out at 25, 28, 22 feet of water as well. And same with watching them swim back to just get a handle on whether the fish are releasing properly or not. So literally I'm giving all sorts of educational tips for how people can handle it better in the future. And I think in terms of like me demonstrating catching them out of 37 feet, if I would have done this same video out of 24 feet, would that have helped this discussion whatsoever?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you're talking about that 24 plus, 20 plus feet, you're kind of running into the same situation a lot of times. I think, and I'm not trying to play or anything like that. I'm just trying to say what ends up happening is people end up taking what they want to take out of something. And a lot of people took that as it's okay to catch these fish deep as long as you don't take pictures of them or whatever. I agree, you're giving them a chance. And I think giving them the chance to get down, whether a descending device or, giving them a little nudge or whatever the case may be, is definitely giving them a chance. Like I said, I think I agreed with a lot of the stuff that you were trying to do there. There was some unintended messaging, I think, that people took out of that. I mean, dude, you got a huge following. Like, you've obviously done a lot of great things. You make great videos. People listen to you. And one of the worries and believe me, I have my issues with our governments and our managing agencies, but I also like to think that they do good things sometimes, particularly the biologists. Sometimes I get it wrong, and hopefully they try to fix it in the future. So when it came out as, to me, it kind of came out as an attack on what they were doing, and maybe it didn't necessarily mean it that way, but
no, I did.
Well, and I just wanted to defend him a little bit because I think, and obviously I'm part of this work group. You didn't know about that, so obviously you're not going to know about that. But they are concerned about the effects. There's no question that forward-facing sonar, I've caught fish that I wouldn't have caught. Now, I'm not saying I've caught more fish than I would have caught that day, but I definitely found fish and caught fish that I wouldn't have caught without that. I think live scope is amazing. I love it. And the way you talk in your video about it being like a video game for kids and stuff like that, 100% agree with you there. Because it opens up a whole new world under the surface and allows you to see everything that's going on down there, from structure to fish behavior to fish interactions with your bait or with other fish, things like that. When you thought fish weren't moving, all of a sudden you realize some of them are just moving like crazy, especially when you're talking about like a lake trout or something like that. I think it's awesome. And so I wanted to we're going to go film some of this barotrauma study, so I'm just jacked about it, and I didn't want people to automatically turn on the DNR or Angling Buzz for that matter, because of what they put out, because obviously they're going to refine some of those things, and I'm anxious to be a part of it. And without, I don't know, I guess ultimately I think we're trying to do the same thing. I just felt like you came on, kind of attacked him a little bit, and I wanted to defend him a little bit in that situation, I guess.
You're defending things that aren't in the video, though, because if you just look at the video from start to finish, there's really nothing good about the video except the act of actually caring and trying, but the actual messaging in the video totally misses, and they don't let on whatsoever that they know anything that they did needed to be refined. At the end, they literally say how happy they were with how everything went, and they're saying they're hoping to maybe get some higher precision by refining their methods. But when you're higher precision, you'd be adjusting the 76% mortality to a 70 or an 80. You wouldn't be changing the 76 like super drastically. And what was published was 76% unreleasable, which for all like future management or regulation considerations, that's 100%. That's not 76. That's full 100%. Right? Because like we're not going to be like, oh, this isn't too bad, it only kills 3/4 of the fish. It's like, no, that rounds up to 100. So they basically demonstrated that 100% of crappies out of an average depth of 30 feet die, and then basically nearly 100%. I think it was like, what was it? Well, no, it was 4 out of 50 when you went shallower. So I guess that's 8%. 8% lived out of an average depth of 26 feet. So right off the bat, they've put the endpoints on there that I said I'm so reluctant to do, and basically said it's safe to fish out of 26 feet of water. It is not safe to fish out of 30 feet of water, whereas my video is giving you an approach to monitor your releases and release more effectively crappies from any depth of water that you end up fishing in. And when you tell people that 30 feet of water is 100% killer, I feel like you're setting it up for divisiveness among angler groups. And I know there's people on my home lake with ice shacks set up in 30 feet of water right now, and it's like, do they all, like, should their friends and family be telling them that they're doing something horrible right now? And it's like, well, maybe not necessarily. We don't know for sure exactly what it's at, and I appreciate that the crappie group that you're talking about cares so much and is looking into it, but from an outsider perspective, all we see is what came across in that study. And now listening to you guys talk, listening to James talk, listening to everybody talk, they're like, oh, well, obviously there's a bunch of things that need to be done different. Well, none of that was obvious until we started talking about it over the last week or so. Before that, the video went out saying everything went great, and all the comments, all the shares, all the energy around the study was that everything's great. And I think all they needed to do was have, one step at the end where they talk a bit more about what needed to be changed. And really what needed to be done is that video just didn't need to go out. If you guys want to keep mentioning it's a pilot study, I think that the emphasis on it being a pilot study is it's a rough copy of something and it's not ready for public consumption, and not that, well, the general public shouldn't be giving this too much criticism because it's just a pilot study. The general public and myself, we don't distinguish between pilot and published study. When it goes in newspaper articles and stuff, like, it's just to be digested as this is pretty much how it is, and it'll get refined and published eventually. But it's kind of a weak excuse to be leaning into the fact that it was just a pilot study, in my opinion.
I mean, you can kind of say that about your video. I mean, right? I mean, have you done...
What part of my video?
Well, I mean, that was kind of the first time you'd done that study, right? That you tried to do something like that?
I mean, in the sense of it being me trying to catch them as deep as I possibly could, it was the first time I've done that, but I would like watch fish release on live scope quite often.
Sure.
And in terms of it being, you know, like hypocritical that I'm fishing for crappies out of 37 feet, well, if you look at it, I released 12 crappies out of 37 feet that might have lived. I'm not going to say they 100% lived. I never did, but they might have lived. And the crappie study from Angling Buzz released 50 and killed 50. So which one is irresponsible?
I guess I don't remember. Did all 50 die? I don't remember all 50 die. You're just rounding up, right?
Well, I'm 76% were unreleasable, but you can see footage of the ones that were quote unquote releasable, and they have opaque eyes and shredded fins and stuff. So those fish aren't doing that well either. And I think that ultimately, if you wanted to extend the quote unquote recovery time to 48 hours, you likely would be losing more fish and not necessarily having more survivors because they're restricted in that net. And if they can't get down to depth, then that's kind of a concern. And I just want to clarify, when I was suggesting descending them in the net for the study, I wasn't endorsing descending in general. And I never mentioned that in my video or anything. So I don't want that little soundbite to get any energy as in like, this is how you handle it, because similar to what Jeremy said, I feel like a descending device is used as a last-ditch effort. And anytime somebody's using it in practice, it's like, okay, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. It's a warning sign to be stopping that, and not that you are doing something good. Sure.
No, and I think, I mean, we both agree that deep water can kill some fish, right? I mean, you're not denying that. You're just trying to show some safe handling measures if you're fishing deep. You know, one thing too, and you know, obviously you know this, but in Minnesota, I don't know what the numbers are, and I'm sure up in your neck of the woods or Lake of the Woods area, the river, there's a lot of fishing pressure. We have a ton of fishing pressure down here on our lakes. So trying to stay ahead of the game just a little bit when it comes to protecting the fisheries, whether it be, you know, barotrauma or advancements in technology, we'd probably both agree that mapping technology has had a bigger impact than forward-facing sonar has, allowing you to find areas of the lake where fish might be. Trying to make sure that we're staying ahead of the game so that we don't get restrictions that are unnecessary as far as, you know, banning some sort of technology, things like that. I don't think anybody wants to see that, and I think we're on the same page there when it comes to that. So I think people fishing deep here might have a bigger impact than people fishing deep, you know, in Canada. Just because of the differences in fishing pressure with more anglers down here than there are up there.
I agree with kind of what you're getting at, but at the same time, if it's an unethical fishing practice and it's nearly 100% mortality, then it doesn't matter whether there's 2 people doing it or 2,000 people doing it. It's just not a good angling activity. And ultimately, I think the answer would be regulation, in the sense of saying, like, literally, either you can't winter crappie fish or you can't fish deeper than a certain depth if the mortality was actually what was reported in that study, or the pilot study. And that's why I'm, you know, I was so concerned with it, because if they're reporting that it's that high, then that makes the sonar technology and the angling practice seem that much more questionable. So that's where I was very uncomfortable with LiveScope being attached to those statistics, because at this point, everyone is agreeing that the study needs to be done differently. So at that point, we're literally all saying that pilot study and the messaging that was done in it shouldn't have gone out. And I don't know if there's too much more to say about it, because I think we would all agree that if the average depth of 30 feet produced a mortality of 30-40%, that's still way too high. But it's a different conversation than if it's nearly 80%, right? So it's like, we don't know what it is. We know it's between 0 and 80. I mean, obviously it's not 0, so it's between 10 and 80 or something, but we don't know what it is. Putting any messaging out there that it's 80 is scary stuff. Like, and those images are really shock and awe with all those fish floating on the surface and stuff. That carries a lot of weight and gets momentum.
Yeah.
Hey,
go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. Just to finish, we keep talking about me fishing in 37 feet. There's a very important scene, and maybe there needs to be more of this, but there's a very important scene with one of the releases, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but near the end, there's one fish that I track that goes down multiple times and keeps coming back up, whether it was purposely swimming up to adjust or whether it was like losing its energy up. I don't know exactly which one, but to me, in terms of education, that is such an important scene, because I literally talk about the fact that this is the fish that I handled the longest, which would be the equivalent of taking the most pictures with. And I almost for sure killed this fish. Like, look and see. And that's where anglers need to realize how much of a direct impact they have on every fish that they handle. And I know you guys had asked where I came up with those percentages when I was listing percentages. And those are just kind of like example percentages of how every single thing we do makes a huge impact on that fish. We can't think that it's like, quote unquote, we're doing our best, because we're not doing our best. If we knew that a fish was on the edge because of barotrauma or whatever, even if it was our biggest crappie ever, if we're going to be releasing it, what's the point on releasing it if we take a bunch of pictures and that puts it over the edge? So having a better understanding of what we're doing to the fish and how much of a direct impact on the release it is so important. And I feel like those things apply to all depths of fishing. Even though I was demonstrating it for emphasis on deeper water, I feel like for crappies, and I think you guys have mentioned this, they can show barotrauma effects even when they're in 18 to 22 feet. People have had experiences where the crappies had trouble releasing. So the same type of methodology applies to that too, and it's all back to just education, like you guys are always preaching, in a good way. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. Do you plan any more videos about this topic? Are you planning anything? Are you going to do anything differently? And I know you addressed some of this in your video, but if you were talking to Angling Buzz or the Minnesota DNR, probably more accurately, saying, hey, if you're going to do another study on this, what would you tell them?
I did speak with Minnesota DNR. We had a good hour and a half phone call, and it made me feel better about some things, in the sense of hearing that they're in the right place, and hearing about your guys' interest in the crappie study, and that you got a good team on this board and stuff. That's all great. It doesn't change the messaging of that video. But I did have a good talk with the Minnesota DNR, and I can tell anybody that would have any suspicions of collusion or some bizarre side plan that all they want is to get this right. And even though the Minnesota DNR took the brunt of criticism from me there and a bunch of negative publicity, the guy I talked to, I won't say who it was, but he was involved with that video. He was completely happy about me doing the video. He was thankful. He just wanted to talk on and on about any suggestions I had, and showed absolutely no animosity towards me at all. So I thought that was very responsible and encouraging for anglers, knowing that these guys are just like, hey, if you have real constructive criticism, bring it on, because we want to make sure we do everything as good as we can. And I'm doing ongoing stuff, but I'm very limited because I have to do things within the regulations. I'm not a biologist, and I've tried to partner with Manitoba Fisheries Branch up here, and they won't give me any permits to do anything, which isn't that far-fetched, but they also won't, bring me on. They see me as a threat, I guess, and they won't bring me on to help them with anything, which also makes it ironic that the Minnesota DNR, publicly thrashing them, is all for talking with me, and they were bring me down if I wanted to come down and whatever. They're like, bring it on. We just want to get this right. And here in Manitoba, there's just, I don't know exactly what the reason is, but there's no opportunity been presented or offered or, you know, for me to work with them. So there's some frustration from my part there. And I guess what I'm getting at is it just limits what I can do, because I can't have a sample size of 50. I can't handle in nets and cages like that. So.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, I'm glad you had a conversation with them. I'm glad it went well. And I know I've been told that they reached out to you to help them out with some stuff too. It's too bad you can't work with your local provincial management agency up there. And you have the unique ability. I mean, the reach and influence that you have is huge, and it's bigger than the management agencies. And so you have this ability to influence a lot of people, which is, obviously we're seeing that in a lot of the comments that we're seeing, and some of the comments are just driving me crazy. Thankfully, there are some level-headed people out there that know that more research needs to be done, and that this is an important topic, and we all need to work towards the same thing. And I think ultimately that's what we all want. So, I mean, first of all, kudos to you for attaining that reach, because that's pretty impressive. And I think it'd be great if you want to come down and work with our DNR down here and get some results. I think that'd be fantastic. So, ultimately, I think, your video, the demonstration with the fish tank, the aquarium, I thought was brilliant. I thought that was really smart. I thought it was a really good video overall. I hope I didn't come across as saying it wasn't, because I think it was. Obviously, I've addressed my concerns with it, but I thought it was well done on a really important topic. And also for anglers' rights, I do want to stress that trying to protect our rights as anglers, I think, is important. That's what we're trying to do here all the time. So I think that was great. Anything else you want to address with the barotrauma topic, or anything with that?
I have a couple other topics within the topic, definitely, and I want to say that I definitely felt love from you guys when you did the podcast. Like, I could tell you guys had mixed feelings on it, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that the community is sure that barotrauma is a big issue. So if I'm taking the emphasis off that and making it seem like it's not a big issue, then that in itself becomes an issue, right? Is kind of where you guys were like, well, wait a minute, no, don't make it seem like this is all cool and happy. And I feel the same way as you guys about that, so I understand where you were coming from in terms of being a little sensitive on anything that would. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you bet.
And I think, we're definitely all on the same page with that. And I guess for me, though, is if it's not 100% and it's actually only 10 to 20%, I want to figure that out the same way you guys want to figure that out. And I, at this point, have no reason to think that it is 80 to 100%. I feel like there's unknowns with it, and a fish could very unpredictably die from barotrauma, but I feel like that applies to a lot of different things that we do in fishing, with, like, depending where the hook placement is. And I hinted at warm water earlier, but like any major stressor that a fish goes through increases the unknowns. And then for us to just say that it's delayed mortality, I think that's a little bit of a cop-out, because like if a deer runs back into the bush after being shot and it lives for another half day, that's not delayed mortality. That's just the gunshot wound. So if we know that barotrauma increases the stress on the fish, and then we are still doing the same amount of handling, well, that handling is the gunshot and it's dying later. I mean, or maybe you're going to say the barotrauma is the gunshot, but we know better in a lot of ways to get it back down there. And if there's things to do to help that fish get back quicker if it's stressed, whether it's coming out of 20 feet or 40 feet, we need to do that. And I think you guys hinted on that when you were talking about descending devices, is at least if you get it back down there, it has a chance, which is exactly the same thing as hurrying it back into the water. At least if you hurry it back into the water, regardless of what the angling scenario is, it has a better chance. Even if it's, a totally unstressed situation, like if we're dealing with ice cold water and a lip hooked fish, I think we pretty much feel like that fish has 100% survival rate, maybe 99% survival rate. So we need to be able to analyze what those extra stressors are and make responsible decisions. And if at the end of the day the responsible decision is just to keep the fish, even if it's a trophy fish, I think it's still a better decision.
Yeah, the responsible decision, that's a big key. And I think education, coming out of this, more education, the better, and hold people personally accountable. You know, I think people are losing that responsibility factor. Like, hey, you can be, just because the limits are one thing doesn't mean you have to go out there and catch a limit every time. You know, have some ethics, have some responsibility, and take care of the fish, get them back in the water, handle them properly. Things like that are pretty important. David, you spent some time in South Dakota. Did you know, I got a message, and I didn't know about this, but on parts of the Missouri River, they had the first 4 walleyes you catch, you had to keep.
Really?
They had that regulation, I don't know for how long, but apparently it changed this year, and now it's back to whatever normal
regular rules
are. But they actually did change something like that because most of the people were fishing walleye deep. So they made it a mandate that you had to keep the first 4 or whatever it is that you catch. So I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to see those types of restrictions take place, which is why more research needs to happen. And, unfortunately, keeping those fish out of the water so you can get some of the data on those fish, lengths and fin clips, that definitely could impair the fish more. But I think you needed to establish some sort of baseline there. I don't know. Those guys will know better than I will on this stuff. And you know, for that matter, you've probably been more involved in it than I have. But I think for, you know, like we've talked about, there has to be some consistency to establish the right data when it comes to science and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with and what you come up with in the future. Other than that, away from the Barotrauma talk, what else you got?
No, not away from that.
Oh, he's got more. All right.
I think it was like the clipping of, I don't want anyone thinking I'm getting hyper focused on like specific things like the clipping of the fin or different things like that, because those are all just things that don't help at all. Like nobody's going to argue that helps the fish swim better, but there's a chance it might hurt it a little bit. And ultimately, I think it was pretty clear that it was the net, the narrowness of the net, that was the thing restricting them from swimming away. I don't think that they really handled them too much aside from that. You know, I itemized all the things that could have been done faster, but I agree with you. There are like some necessary steps that they need to do when they're doing their study. It all just adds up to fish handling, and I would consider the net that was being restrictive to be fish handling also. So when I say that it was excessive fish handling, it's not necessarily processes with the measuring and stuff like that, although that all adds to it. It was just all of it combined, including the netting. The accumulation of all that. One other thing I wanted to mention is the thought process behind this has always been that the crappies can only swim 5 or 10 feet down and then immediately come up under the ice. So that is why I was demonstrating specifically that, no, look, they can swim all the way back down to the bottom. Doesn't mean that they're going to live. And I personally have never seen the carpet under the ice, but I heard you guys reference it, and I just wanted to add this perspective. It was mentioned that you see it when the ice is clear around fish houses, right?
Yeah, people have said that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and this is in keeping also with the regulation that you just mentioned. I think keeping the first 4 would be a little extreme, but ruling out culling is just such an obvious regulation that I have no idea why it hasn't been done yet. And that's one of the things that frustrates me is we're doing studies and looking for things we can improve on when there is a bunch of regulation things, and I could go through them with anyone's department or branches. There's a bunch of things that can be changed right off the bat, like something like culling that is just so obvious, and it's ridiculous that isn't done already. And I guarantee that most of the situations that you get referencing with fish under the ice around a fish house is people that are sitting there culling those crappies all day long, and those fish that are underneath the ice are culled fish. They're not just released fish.
Yeah, well, I think you see culling a lot more in the summer maybe than in the winter. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of culling fish either. I will agree with you there. I think on the rainy, maybe border waters, you can't do it here. But
it's legal in Minnesota, but yeah, South Dakota it's not. North Dakota I don't believe it is, but I know it is in Minnesota, and people have mixed feelings about it. And you know, you talk to it. It's a whole nother discussion when you talk to a tournament angler. But
that's
I'm sure I've never fished with people that have done it, but I wouldn't surprise me one bit if there's people with a 5-gallon bucket in an ice castle sitting there sorting out till they go home with all their 13-inch crappies or something. Wouldn't shock me one bit.
Absolutely. If you're just sitting in an ice castle all day, and
Yeah.
enjoying your thing. Like I would, if it was legal and I wasn't thinking that I was hurting the fish, I would be sorting those crappies all day too. If nobody had explained to me that those crappies have a way worse survival percentage, I would absolutely want to bring home the absolute biggest I could.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that should not, that could be a rule change I get behind. No culling. I don't, and even culling in the summer, I'm not really a big fan of.
No, it honestly might be even more detrimental in the summer because you're dealing with way warmer water, right? Yeah. And I think that could be something agreed on, and I don't know.
Can you imagine if it was like crappies in the middle of summer out of 35 feet of water? So now you've got hot water and crappies. Just that, they'd have no chance. It's like a huge a huge benefit they have to all these ice fishing discussions is how durable the fish are with the water being so ice cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is what I like about these discussions and how this has opened up, because we can sit here and hash things out as anglers and those in the field before people in St. Paul or Ottawa or other capital buildings are making our decisions for us. And I'm pretty appreciative of that, and glad we can have these open discussions, whether we sometimes disagree with each other or not, but we can sit down and work things out and try to find pieces of our fishing to try to make better.
I think it's important. I was just going to say, I think it's important sometimes to disagree within the community. I know sometimes there's the messaging out there, don't argue with each other. We're all anglers, or we're all hunters.
On the same team.
We're all on the same team. And it's like, but if we don't think that some players on our team are doing things the right way, it's not like let's try to find the better solution before. Oh, my camera froze up. Let's try to find the better solution before the government imposes those mandates on us. It's a bit of a self-policing. So I think that's, I think it's important to have discussions like this so that we find the right solution before it's found for us.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely think we're all on the same page. And at no point did I think that Jeremy wanted to ban forward-facing sonar, or that Jeremy doesn't know better about all of these topics. It was just, I think, kind of like too many people involved in a way at a certain point, and kind of everyone just feeling like, they're not the ones that are actually watching it too closely or managing everything. And even when the final video got done, Jeremy probably was aware of the net thing, obviously, and I think the Minnesota DNR was too, but it's not like either of them was at the last minute in production and be like, hey, let's add a little bit casting doubt on this whole video or whatever. It was just like, a lot of different moving pieces, and nobody really put their foot down to maybe stop the video from going out or add an extra scene to the video. But I know these people are all smart people and well-intentioned people. It just didn't go out exactly how it could go out. Before you change the topic all the way out of all this stuff, Brett, I was just going to say, you said multiple times in the last video that nobody wants to ban forward-facing sonar, and I feel like what you're saying is nobody in this immediate conversation wants to ban forward-facing sonar, but there's tons of people out there, namely anyone who doesn't have one, that would be interested in banning it, and those people make up the majority. So if all of a sudden we start contributing to that messaging that there's a concern with forward-facing sonar, I don't get to know that you guys are having backroom conversations that are saying, no, we're definitely not. All I'm seeing is on the outside some negativity around it, and I couldn't help but really hit me with the irony of those two videos done by Angling Buzz showed the same scenario of the deep sensitive crappies, and in the first video, forward-facing sonar wasn't even in the picture, but the scenario was exactly the same in the sense of these are vulnerable fish, and it's a vulnerable fishing situation, nothing to do with forward-facing sonar. Right. So that's why I didn't like forward-facing sonar coming along for that video in general.
No, and that makes total sense. And I should probably clarify. Obviously, there are people that have argued with me about forward-facing sonar, and they say, "Oh, it's just like trail cameras. It's cheating out there." And I say, "Well, trail cameras have kept me from shooting a deer in the past. So it's not really it's live scope isn't a magic fish catcher by any means. That's why, and honestly, that's why this work group was formed, is to try to get the education out there and really show what effect it has. And it has helped catch fish, but it's also helped me sit on a pot of fish that won't bite longer than I probably would have if I didn't see all those fish swimming around down there on live scope. So it's a genuine concern to make sure that it's not going to get banned for us. But I didn't want you to think that the DNR was doing this to try to make the case for banning forward-facing sonar, because as anglers, we don't want to see the state put more restrictions, or our governments put more restrictions on us out there to go out and catch fish. So.
Yeah, but if the average guy that's going out there just to catch his 10 or 15, I don't know what your limit is. Is it 10 or 15?
Depends on the lake.
Yeah.
But
we have a lot of lake-specific regulations here.
If the average guy that's going there, if he wasn't allowed to call, he'd be going out there to fill his pail up and then go home. So then really the problem is the hardcore catch and release angler who has live scope. And if I was on that side of not having it, I would feel the same way after watching that Angling Buzz study of that huge rate of mortality. And I'd be like, yeah, we need to get rid of this forward-facing sonar. These super hardcore catch and release anglers are out there beating up all these fish, and these fish aren't even living. These guys aren't even eating the fish. It's very irresponsible.
Yeah, well, and that's why I appreciated you using live scope as a conservation tool and making the point that was what you were using it for, because I agree. It's not going to signal the end of fishing, but we do know it's changed fishing. And I mean, you look at any tournament out there, walleye tournament, that's why they banned it. And muskies are a whole different animal that would take a longer discussion to get into, but it's changed fishing. You look at bass tournaments, and I know you brought up Gussie and the fact that he didn't catch his full bag in that tournament using live scope. So it's not a magic formula for sure, but it helps, and I love amazing.
Your expression. I love your expression about it being not a magic fish catcher, and like when we go and talk about how awesome it is and exciting it is, how we're getting so much better at fishing in so many ways, how much more humiliating is it when you go out and still don't catching? Oh my goodness, terrible.
Yeah. That's almost one of the worst parts. It's like you're watching so many fish just swim by your bait. Like, what are you doing? Just bite it. Yeah.
The other night we were out and my neighbor kind of spotted one, like it was 49 feet away, and we were inside the ice house, and I went outside and I drilled one hole, and it was like right at 49 feet. And I was like, dropped down, caught the fish. So easy. And I'm just thinking, wow, I want to show this, but obviously if a lot of people saw this, they would just be like, get rid of that technology. That's so horrible. Well, fast forward for the next 2 hours, we continue to do it, and I don't catch a single another one, even though he has me out there drilling countless these fish around. I don't catch a single another fish doing that, and it just it's hard to get a grasp on that and explain to people that it isn't a slam dunk. It's just like it gives you something to do, and that's the biggest part for me is it all comes with work. It's not like you just flip a switch and it brings them in. Like what was that thing that went on the front of your boat that was supposed to trigger the fish to bite? It was started with hyper or something like that.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, hydrowave.
Yeah.
Hydrowave. The funny thing about that is everyone was trying to market it and make it seem so awesome. If that actually worked, it would have been banned. And the fact that it didn't really do anything is why it wasn't banned. So that's why with live scope, it actually is an effective tool, but it isn't like it brings fish in or turns it into a cheat code. You have to apply effort to realize any gain out of it. Every time that you feel a benefit, you're drilling more holes, typically, not less holes, or moving your boat around, looking around. I mean, the reason with the muskie guys that it gets so questionable is because they're only not actually fishing. They're just driving around burning gas and in some cases, and that's why they wanted to get rid of it. And I can understand that because it does take away from fair chase a bit. I mean, it'd be one thing if they wanted to do that style out of man-powered, like in Wisconsin, how you weren't allowed to troll for many years. It'd be one thing if, okay, you want to chase the muskie around with forward-facing sonar? Well, you got to do it with paddle powered, and then it would be that's fun, I suppose.
I want to see a bunch of musky tournament anglers in $100,000 boats just paddling.
Yeah, got a push-pull platform on the back.
Well, and sometimes live scope pushes the fish away. I mean, sometimes it spooks the fish. It's not like it's emitting some sound that's going to bring the fish in. Sometimes it's definitely. It was pretty interesting. I brought up Tasman earlier. I was using my live scope up at Tasman last summer and fishing. And you want to talk about barotrauma and fishing deep. Now, we were fishing for lake trout, which is they're built a little bit differently. But we would see a fish in 100 feet of water on that live scope, and if we were jigging or whatever, drop a bait down to it, and they would either be reacting off the boat in 100 feet of water or the live scope. And it was hard to tell which one, but I mean, you're talking about 100 feet of water. You wouldn't think they'd be reacting off of either. It was probably the live scope realistically, but you definitely could see fish moving away from that beam coming off the live scope. So it's.
How do you know? How do you know though? Because if a fish is always swimming, let's just say it's a moving fish, by the time you see it with the live scope, how did you know it wasn't moving and swimming before that?
Well, you might see it turn directions and go the other way. It might have been coming towards us, and then it spins around and goes back the other way. We physically see them change directions on the live scope as we came into it. So, and maybe it was the introduction of the bait, the jig or whatever. It's hard to say what it was.
There's a lot of different factors that went into it, but. Yeah. And that's why, we really don't know. It could have been the boat, could have been a bait, could have been live scope, but it made us question. And it's hard to say, but it brings up the question: did live scope actually help us there? Well, a little bit. Saw some things.
It's fun to watch,
but
anyway.
It comes back to a lot of unknowns again, and we're just kind of trying to figure, just being a little. I can't find the right word right now. I don't know what I'm
speculating.
Yes, that's the word.
Sure. Words are tough.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry to play devil's advocate just by my nature, but there's quite a few guys, and I don't know if this is you guys or people that feel like live scope we'll come back to crappies, spooks the crappies, so they use the live scope to find them, and then they shut the live scope off and use a traditional flasher. Do you guys know people like that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
I only fish with a live scope, and I always fish in the hole I'm fishing. So I'm not thinking that there's days where I'm at a huge disadvantage, and I've gone out fishing with those people under that opinion, and I haven't been outfished by them. So once you start practicing what you're sure works, it's just like a lure color or whatever. You reinforce that is the answer. And, people only fish the full moon for muskies. So it's like they catch all their biggest fish in the full moon, or they only fish at sunset for walleye, which I believe is a huge benefit, fishing at sunset for walleye. But if that's the only time of day you fish, then how are you actually getting data from all the different other options?
Yep. That's a good point. And I like hearing that, because I haven't seen any hard evidence when I've been fishing with live scope saying, the live scope's definitely pushing them. And part of that too is I've been using it on my trolling motor, so you could say, hey, they're spooking off the trolling motor more than anything. But I have heard that concept of people thinking they're pushing it with the live scope, and so it's cool to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you've had not that the same results, because it's something I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear that live scope's pushing fish, because I like using it.
Yeah.
Picture if you're sitting there ice fishing.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just saying I only use the live scope.
Yeah, I only fish with live scope as well. I don't switch to flashers.
I was going to say, a lot of people, when they're ice fishing, a fish starts coming towards them, and then it moves a little bit. So with the beam, they move to follow the fish, right? Mm-hmm. And it appears to keep coming towards them, but then at a certain point, what happens? Oh, it swam away, right? And they're like, it sensed the live scope and swam away because it was coming right towards me. But if you picture a fish swimming kind of like diagonally towards you, it's going to be eventually going away from you, whether you exist or not. So when you start moving your live scope to follow the fish, it's shortening the distance. It's like 30 feet away. Now it's 20 feet away. Now it's 10 feet away. Oh my goodness, now he's getting further away, and he was coming right towards me, but he was never actually coming right towards you. And if you don't move your beam and you just have your beam out to the side, a fish has to intersect your beam either coming towards you or going away from you. So if he's going away from you, he was always going away from you. If he's coming towards you, he has to be leaving the beam and not actually coming directly towards you, right? It would be a very rare and specific situation that a fish would actually swim directly to you. There's just too many other directions where a fish is more likely to be swimming.
And honestly, I think that's what we're learning from LiveScope more than anything. From the old, either just your flasher or your 2D or whatever, you don't see those fish change directions, or you don't always know what direction they're coming or going or things like that. It's it's really amazing. I mean, it's like having an underwater camera that you can use at night or in murky water or things like that. We're learning so much more about fish behavior, and yeah, maybe they're getting shine, maybe it's not having an effect. It's hard to say without, like I don't have any personal experience to say one way or the other, just because, especially in the winter, that's all in the summer, that's all I do. I just love the LiveScope. That's if I'm not catching them on the LiveScope,
You're not catching them.
Yeah, which half the time I'm not catching them anyway. Well. And you said the fish are going away from you. Most of the time, the fish are always just going away from me, no matter what. But I don't know. I've just had so much fun with that thing, and I can't wait. We're waiting on. I don't know how your ice is up there, but we've just had terrible ice here in Minnesota so far this year. So I haven't done any winter fishing yet.
I was in a boat 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh wow,
ridiculous. How is your ice up there? How's fishing been?
Yeah, we've got, I think, like 13, 14 inches, but since it's been so mild, it's definitely presenting dangerous ice in a lot of different places. Like there's been situations on a lot of places that there usually isn't. And there was one this week. I'm not talking about the fatality last week, but on Lake of the Woods, but there was another situation on this week on the South Shore where the ice pulled away and a bunch of people got stranded. I'm sure you guys are hearing this all the time on different lakes. And
yeah.
There's a little bit of that up here too, because as much as we have 13 or 14 inches, we'd probably usually have like close to 2 feet at this point. So
when you have a little bit more current up there in that area too, I suppose.
In some places for sure. Yeah.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming on. If there's anything else you want to add or anything coming up that you want to talk about, anything you want to plug or anything, or when, I know we waited a long time for the last video. When do you think the next one's coming out?
I did another, I gotta be careful. I don't want to say too much and have a knock on the door from local conservation or something. So, there's more in the works that's been done already. And, it won't be too long.
Cool. All right. Anything else you guys wanted to say?
No, just
I think so.
I appreciate this. I appreciate the pushback on other anglers and opening the door for discussion and trying to hash things out again and make sure we're not putting messaging out that's throwing our fisheries in jeopardy or our future of fishing, because we all want the same goal of healthy, sustainable fisheries, and none of us want more regulation. So I appreciate you coming on and appreciate the opening the doors for more discussion. I know there have been numerous other podcasts discussing barotrauma this past couple weeks, and it's the talk of ice fishing right now. So
which is good.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hey,
the only final thought I'd have, but
give me your final thought, and then I got one more question for you that I want to ask.
My final thought on this whole topic is just that this all comes back to fish handling, because I look at barotrauma being a serious concern, but we can mitigate a great deal of it with proper fish handling, because the barotrauma can be a concern in shallower water too, like I was saying. But our fish handling as an entire community just needs to get so much better. And it's tough because inherent to fishing is like the whole look at me thing, right? Look at the fish I caught. So, and that's understandable. And if I come across as being judgmental on these topics whatsoever, it's like I have made these mistakes more than anyone will have. I've done so many things with filming and just like trying to get pictures where it's like, oh shoot, should have known better and somehow still don't. And then when you're in a situation like you're in a tournament or you're doing a fish transfer, it's like you all of a sudden realize how you're behaving and handling the fish is so much different. And it's like, I'm being insincere so many times out there when it's like, oh, I'll just dunk the fish again. I'll just put the fish in the net. The fish doesn't want to be in those scenarios. And, you bring in a fish really quick and then you have it in the net. That is still fish handling. Like the fish is going like this against the net. That is fish handling. That is not a fish in a happy scenario where he can stay in that net indefinitely. So all of the absolute core basics with having your release tools ready, having your camera ready, being proactive with your plan and getting the fish released is just, it's obvious, but it is paramount importance. And when you watch any fishing show, including my own, we don't do a good enough job of making people feel like that fish needs to get back in the water, because we want to have our hero moment and smile and be like, look at this, it's so awesome. But it should be more like, okay, there it is. Freaking rights, we did it. Back in the water. Now let's talk about how awesome it is. Now that the fish is gone, now is the time to talk about it. And then when the next generation watches that and sees that, they're going to be out there doing the exact same thing, because they are so monkey see, monkey do. They pick up on everything. They pick up on what lures are being used. They pick up on all the little things. So if they see you being super anxious to get the fish back in the water, they're going to do the exact same thing when they're in that scenario. So we all need to do a way better job with that. And it's going to come, all of a sudden, it'll just come like a tidal wave, and everyone's going to be doing it better. And, you know, we'll get some new regulations in here, like for example, with the no culling and stuff. And I think that the future is extremely bright with, there's more angling pressure, but if we have better education, like you guys are always preaching, it's good things coming for everyone and for the fisheries.
Yeah, for sure. People doing it for the gram. So I know you were fishing and you came in off the ice to do this, so I appreciate that. Well, I got one more question for you, then we'll let you get back out there. You have a big reach. You've got a big following, and I've watched... You know, we've got a modest following. I've watched different people in the industry, when they hit a certain level, all of a sudden you become the target of the antis, whether you're in the hunting side. Hunting gets it more than fishing does, but obviously fishing sees it too. So when you're talking about people wanting to ban this or that or putting more restrictions on it, you may be coming from a position that sees more messaging than the average guy does out there when it comes to stuff like this, based on the fact that you are, as high as you are in that reach level. Are you seeing a lot of negative messaging when it comes to, oh, you're just killing all those fish, fish are beautiful and should be left alone, and humans are the worst, blah, blah, blah. That kind of messaging that seems to permeate the outdoor world these days. Do you feel like you get that more than the average, say YouTuber or angler or anybody else in the outdoor industry?
I wouldn't say so. I don't really feel that, or,
that's good.
I'm kind of, in my own bubble most of the time, and don't really feel too much for highs or lows with that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that that's out there, because I think that is keeping us in check, and it's going to be in our benefit that they are there holding us accountable in that sense. As long as we unite and are responsible, I don't think we're going to have anything to worry about, and we should be good, but the monster's always there knocking, right?
Absolutely. Well, I think you nailed it. Be responsible and be ethical out there, and just try to, I don't want to put, I want to harvest fish and eat them too, but I want to make sure that our fisheries are sustainable. So I think we're all trying to do the right thing. Aaron Wiebe, thanks again for being on the show. Good luck with everything with the channel and everything that you're doing, and hey, good luck fishing this afternoon.
Thank you guys so much for your time. Hey, sorry, David and Dan, we kind of didn't include you too much. Do you guys have any in here?
No, we're all good. We, Brett and I have sat down and talked about this most of the week, so we kind of were sharing the same opinions, and so I just kind of sat back here and ran the board. So we're all good, and we appreciate that.
David, you need to go watch these videos now. That might have helped.
Probably would have helped with the conversation.
I know you've been busy, but. Anyway, looking forward to the next video. Aaron, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.